Hello, everybody, and welcome to our January 2025 astrology forecast. Today, I'm delighted to have our esteemed faculty member back on the show, Celeste Brooks. So, thank you so much for joining us again today. And how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic.
Wonderful. Well, 2024 has been a hell of a ride. So, we're now begin talking about the new year. So, as we dive in, let's get into our first week. Celeste, what are your thoughts for the first week of the new year?
Yeah, so the first week of the new year is going to be a really interesting energy. I love how well the sun in Capricorn, we're in Capricorn season, so it's a time to get serious, get more disciplined. And the first aspect is the sun is in a quincunx with Jupiter and Gemini. So I think a lot of people, just like every year, but maybe there's even more energy for this. Quincunxes move us into new situation where we have to release and let go of something, and releasing and let go of Jupiter, of overindulgence and too much of everything. Maybe even Jupiter and Gemini, too much of the mental stimulation, as well as, a lot of socializing and conversation. So people are going to be retreating and getting serious. And then Venus entering Pisces, the sign of her exaltation. So I love this energy of Venus entering Pisces, because this is a wonderful time to to take time away from everyone, and maybe in a little bit of isolation, and listen to beautiful music, and enjoy this slower pace, and get more internal. But I'm so interested to see how this shows up with Venus entering the sign of Pisces, this mutable, watery energy. And on the same day, Mars retrograde opposite Pluto. So, one of the most beautiful, gentle symbologies of Venus entering Pisces, and the most chaotic and potentially violent or intense energy on the same day, with Mars, the planet of action, war, assertion, opposite Pluto. Like unearthing this deep volcanic energy. What are you seeing with that energy?
I completely agree with you. It's almost like two opposing energies. As you said, we've got this beautiful Venus going into her exaltation, but it makes the quincunx to the Mars and also the semi-sextile to the Pluto. So these two polar opposite energies, I think half the people might be seeking pleasure, while the others are embroiled in conflict and potential destruction, as you mentioned. So it's really, I would say for this week, that my advice would be to stay out the fray. Certainly watch out for the roads if you're driving this week. And really, maybe take, as you said, Celeste, maybe take that bit of energy and go off and isolate yourself and enjoy some art, some music, and that really wonderfully mutable water pleasures with that Venus exalted in Pisces.
Yeah, yeah. And notice what you're seeing when Venus goes into Pisces. The last time this happened, last year, Queen Reina from Jordan was talking about the horrors of the war in Gaza. So we saw this literal exalted figure, a queen who was lifted up by marriage. I think there may be big news, because we have the next day Mercury in this quincunx with Uranus and Taurus. There may be some big news about someone who's in the music industry or something like that. Involved in the Sean Combs stuff could be where how we see this Venus and Pisces, like either a married couple or a woman, or the spouse of someone really famous, maybe gets caught up in this, in the Sean Combs trial, which is going to be big news for this year, because there's something serious coming on the first week with the sun, and it's a sextile. So sextiles are opportunities, so it's a little bit of a gentle energy, but the sun is going to spotlight something Saturnian, Saturn and Pisces. So what are we looking at that's difficult, or a hardship, or someone in someone who's a sun figure, maybe a leader, having some consequences or trying to get over a difficult hump. It'll be really interesting to see how this shows up. What is the news around this? Is it someone in music or what have you, or royalty, or who's the exalted figures we're looking at this
That'll be
week?
really interesting to find out. And I think what complicates matters as well with that Mars opposite Pluto is they're both in fixed signs. So I think there's an extra element of stubbornness here as well, maybe extra potential for destruction and violence. So again, my advice would maybe just stay out the fray and let people maybe blow off some steam if that's what they need to do. But that'd be really interesting to see, Celeste. Absolutely.
Yeah, and because the Mars opposite Pluto's happens on January 2nd, I would be really circumspect about, yeah, well, I don't know if people will see this before then, but be careful. I would stay out of huge crowds for the New Year's Eve celebrations would be my suggestion for people with Mars. Mars retrograde in Leo could be someone who wants to do something very dramatic to make a big statement. And Aquarius is a sign of the collective and groups. And so doing something like in a group setting that is going to get a lot of attention would be my concern about this, like, or at a music concert or something like that.
I think that's really great advice, maybe to avoid large crowds. And of course, if we're talking about Pluto and Aquarius in general, we've also had that case recently with Luigi Mangione, if I'm saying his name correctly. But I don't know about you, Celeste, but it feels like that's the first shot across the bow of this. Pluto now will stay in Aquarius for the next 20 years. And obviously, if we look historically, we had the French Revolution, the American Revolution, deeper into that Pluto and Aquarius. So I've just got this feeling that these CEOs or the media elites or the corporate elites are all on guard. And I think they'll have to be, especially for the next, well, for the next decade or two, because I think this is the maybe the first beginnings of the rumblings and potential violence against those with the haves and the have-nots. What are your thoughts, Celeste, on this?
Absolutely. Luigi Mangione is Pluto. Yeah, that was the first shot in terms of he's really brought to the awareness. So when the CEO of United Healthcare was murdered by Luigi, Mercury was retrograde in Sagittarius, and it was 2 days before Mars went retrograde in Leo, both fire signs where the energy is pushed outward. So he murdered this CEO, and then what happens with retrogrades, they pull back the tape so we can see what's underneath, and the fury and the anger about how horrible the healthcare insurance companies treat the people they're supposed to be serving, like, burst out into the collective, and the genie's out of the bottle. You can't put it back in by scolding people about how they are not supposed to be celebrating this taking out of someone who, the CEO of this healthcare company, this archetype of the Pluto and Capricorn, the greedy, holding on to all of, hoarding the wealth, rewarding, like, keeping this hierarchical structure where only the people at the very top of the pyramid deserve to have health and well-being, everyone else, good luck kind of energy. And after this happened, we started seeing wanted posters. Like, that's very Sagittarian, cowboy, wanted dead or alive kind of posters in New York City popped up, and some people created a wanted deck with all these different CEOs. So there is huge concern amongst business leaders about their own safety. And yeah, maybe people will be going back into the office in January and noticing, oh, you can't just walk into your CEO's office anymore. They have like some elaborate system. Son, there's a boundary. Saturn and Pisces, Sun sextile Saturn and Pisces. There's a boundary keeping the CEO more protected, or anyone in the C-suite more protected from the masses could be something that we're seeing. And it's interesting that Luigi was brought up on terrorism charges. They're charging him with terrorism, saying that he intended to start a movement. So we'll see. It'll be this trial is going to be must see TV. Hopefully it'll be broadcast.
Really, really interesting. Of course, on a human level, we don't condone violence, but
No.
it's really interesting how it's tapped into the collective. And of course, that wider picture of, particularly in the US healthcare system, where it's acted for many decades like a cartel. I mean, you can think about the criminality of the insurance industry, along with military industrial complex and all of these big entities that have, I think they've shown a study where they say the people don't affect policy anymore. It doesn't matter how people vote, who they get in, because it's been so corrupted. And we can go back to, I like George Carlin's views back in the day, and he's saying it's getting to the point now where obviously no one condones violence, but all the pearl clutchers in the media are all saying, how can people be so inhumane? Well, it's got to the point where tens of thousands of people are dying each year because of the healthcare industry. And of course, there's no lack of sympathy out there. And as you said, it's an archetype. It's not the individual, that particular individual CEO, but as a representative for all of them. So I think this is just a first shot in this long period. So they have to be on notice, I would say.
Yes, because the power, each side is in rebellion to the one before it. And so as Pluto exited Capricorn and it switched for the last time into Aquarius on November 19th, moving from like we saw a lot of exposure of the power dynamics and the rot. Pluto brings up the rot for us to see and deal with of that hierarchical structure versus Aquarius where we're looking at more of the collective and bringing more equality and fairness, but it's bringing up the rot of group, the group think, like people getting together and cheering on someone like this person was a human being and yeah, being murdered, but but bringing the subjugation of the groups of people. So both of these things can be true at the same time. Like murder is wrong, but what's also wrong is denying people coverage of who pay into their health care, the services they deserve in order to just give stockholders more money on their investment.
Absolutely. And the last thing I'll say on this is quite interesting. After decades of protests, I've been out on protest before many years ago, but it's got to a point where none of that actually worked. But this, they had one health insurance company actually reverse their decision on one of their procedures. Was it what was it called?
Anesthesia.
Anesthesia, and they've reversed their decision. But what's going to be worse for the healthcare industry is that everyone's going to take a mental note now of the fact that that act of violence did actually work. So it might work against them as you've got this revolutionary spirit in the air. So that's going to be really, really interesting as we move forward.
Absolutely. And one of the things I was looking at with Mars retrograde was that Mars went retrograde on Friday, December 6th, and then Neptune went direct on Saturday, December 7th. And right as we were coming up to that, there was Anthem Blue Cross who had instituted this policy where you could only they decided how long a surgery should take, and if it went longer, they would no longer cover anesthesia. So that's Mars rules surgery, and they reversed this decision about surgeries. And Neptune rules drugs like anesthesia, and Neptune going direct. Yes, we're still going to pay for you to remain unconscious while you're being operated on. We're not going to have them wake you up in the middle of your surgery, or you be hit with this humongous bill afterwards because maybe there were some complications or what have you, and it took longer, like having doctors rush through your surgery because they want to be covered is not in the best interest of the collective.
Such great points. Well, on to our second week, and enough of talk about the second Gilded Age that we're in. So, Celeste, week two, what are your thoughts?
So we have Mercury square Neptune. So this is I think it's Mercury in Capricorn square Neptune in Pisces. Pisces is a water sign, Neptune is oceanic. And with Mars retrograde re-entering the water sign of Cancer on the same day, like bringing this energy of a trine to Mars and Neptune, which is trines just remove all restrictions. They're smooth, easy flowing energy. And I feel like number one, this is weather related, that we're going to be seeing Mercury rules the wind, windy, rainy weather, and Mercury's in Capricorn. You could be hearing someone talking about Capricorn's an earth sign, lots of rain causing earth to move. So there's this potential for landslides, especially with Mercury in Capricorn. Excuse me, that's not Mercury in Capricorn, it's Mercury in Sagittarius when it makes that quincunx to Mars in Cancer and then moves into Capricorn. That's when we're talking about like that landslide energy, lots of water and land moving. I feel like is what we could be talking about with that.
That's really interesting. I think for me, week two, this is a week, and this is not a time to take actions based on any decisions that you've made. We've got Mercury still in its detriment, square Neptune, muddying those waters even further. Yes, Mercury's now direct at this point, but still in detriment, square Neptune. On top of that, we've got the Mars retrograde back into its fall. So for me, if you, this is on a Monday, so if you're any business meetings or if you're having to sign any deals, I'd certainly say watch out for any BS out there, any people trying to pull the wool over your eyes. So I would say, maybe push negotiations and certainly don't be signing any deals at the beginning of the week. If you have to do it quite quickly, I'd probably wait until January 8th as Mercury goes into the Earth sign, goes into Capricorn for more of an idea. So for me, beginning of week two, watch out for all the BS that might be floating around.
Yeah, yeah. Be very careful with any kind of. So there may be something coming to our conscious attention about deception or cyber crimes kind of things with Mercury square Neptune. Be careful about falling for the okie doke and pushing a link on your computer. Now you got a virus and you got to waste all kinds of time fixing this. And that's the Mars back into Cancer. You got all this emotional upset. Cancer rules the stomach, and Mars could be like irritating stomach ache back in that sign because now you got a virus and you got to spend half a day fixing your Facebook or whatever.
What's
Yeah.
curious as well is it falls on January 6th, which for the US is a particularly important date with the anniversary of the attack on the Capitol. So for me, sometimes that Mercury in Sagittarius is more about beliefs rather than facts. And with that square to Neptune, I'd just be careful for any whitewashing or, trying to go revisionist history and people trying to obscure the facts of what's happened in recent American history. So that's a very curious day for this to be going on, I think, January 6th.
Yeah, the day of love. It's been how it was described by the previous and next president, which I think we'll also be hearing about all of the violence on that day and how awful it was. It depends on your sources, how it is crafted. So that would be very interesting to see, side by side the different discussions of what went on that day.
It's a really good point because I think now, particularly the American public, is very much siloed in their own containers of information. I think that's had a lot to do with this Neptune in Pisces for so long, but it is really people living in different realities, which is very unfortunate. What are your thoughts? Very, very interesting as we come up to the North Node entering Pisces. What are your thoughts, Celeste?
Yeah, well, it's very interesting. January 8th is going to be a very interesting day as well, because what are we talking about? Mercury enters the sign of Capricorn, and then it squares the moon's nodes all at 0 degrees, and 0 degrees of the cardinal signs are a world point. So there's going to be something that gets our attention related to Capricorn themes, governments, big business, the elderly. That's people are thinking about Mercury or talking about. And ooh, with the Sun square Chiron, that could be like a leader is experiencing, the leader, Sun figures are leaders, are experiencing difficult Chiron and Aries. This could also be like we were talking about with Luigi. There is some shocking thing where someone tries to take action against another CEO on this day. So we'll see what happens, or some figure like that. Around the world, we may be hearing about, leaders and having difficulties. But then the North Node enters Pisces. So the nodes move backwards through the zodiac and switch signs every 18 months, and they speak to what the collective is focused on. And the nodes are always on an axis. So since July of 2023, the North Node entered Aries and the South Node entered Libra. The signs, that's the axis of relationships. So think about, since back then, how much the stories that we've been hearing about and the collective has been focused on relationships, Libra, and like the South Node's a drain, like the lack of diplomacy with what we've been seeing going on. The war in Ukraine still happening during this time, the war in Gaza began, and there was the October 7th and whatnot. So an amplification of Aries, violence, conflict. Aries is a bestial sign where people are acting out of like passions and more of that physical stuff. The drain of Libra, a humane sign, and being courteous and all of this kind of stuff, like going away, going along to get along, going to way. And now they're switching from the North Node's moving from the first sign of the first sign to the last sign. So this is a big shift. North Node moving from Aries back into Pisces, like this forward initiating energy back into this soup of and when I think we're going to be looking at potentially a big storm with the nodes changing signs. What are we seeing right around that day that's related to Pisces themes? Pisces rules the ocean, any kind of body of water, any kind of water themes, hospitals, people who are very disadvantaged, like refugees, drug addicts, homeless people. So, is there something going on where, a lot of people are losing their homes because of a storm or something like that? And the South Node enters Virgo, and Virgo rules things like farmland and health. Or it could be something about, bird flu is a big story now. So are we looking at storms, sickness, or disadvantaged people? What are the stories right around January 11th that this amplification of this diffusive chaotic energy and this lack of organization, Virgo, lack of resources, like band-aids, like the things that we just need, just the mundane things, are being what we're going to be talking about likely.
That'll be really interesting to look out for. And going back to what you were saying, it's really interesting talking about when we had the North Aries, the South Node in Libra, and almost that what we've seen over the past 18 months, this gender divide, particularly if we're talking about the recent election and the divide between maybe this more masculine and more Mars ruled fire energy versus, as you said, the diplomacy and the Venus ruled. So maybe that divide between the masculine and the feminine, and we've seen that gender divide very recently. So as we switch from the North Node into Pisces, the South Node into Virgo, I wonder if that might subdue some of that conflict somewhat as we get the North Node in a Jupiter ruled sign, the South Node in a Mercury ruled sign. But again, it's, as you said, going back into that soup. So are we going back to the realms of belief over facts, We've got the North Node in Pisces, the South Node with Virgo. Are we going to be losing the facts and we're just going to be in a realm of fantasy again? I mean, that's going to be really quite interesting as we move forward.
I feel like we're living in a movie. It's like I can't believe what is going on. And I love what you talked about with the men versus women sort of thing with right now the Dominique Pellico trial in France is going on where this woman was abused by her husband and he let all these other people abuse her and they're all going to jail
Oh,
in
wow.
France. It's
Wow.
getting a lot of attention about this horrific story.
That sounds awful. Wow. But that kind of ties into what we've been talking about. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Okay, Celeste, into week 3, your thoughts.
So this is going to be an interesting week. Um, we start the week with Mars retrograde trine Neptune in Pisces. So Mars retrograde in Cancer, trine Neptune in Pisces. This is another time to be really careful about being safe because Mars attacks. Being safe with you're protecting yourself against deception. Also, be aware this could be a week with a lot of storms, but the thing that I'm most interested in is from January 13th to 16th, every year in San Francisco, there's the JP Morgan healthcare conference. So healthcare executives from around the world are descending on San Francisco this week. And it's going to be very different because I bet there's going to be a lot more security. And it starts on the day that the Sun in Capricorn, Sun in Capricorn is a CEO. It's a leader of a business. Trine Uranus retrograde in Taurus. So what are they going to be talking about in the opening plenaries? What happened to the CEO of United Healthcare? There's also this full moon on the day. So really a full moon about Cancer versus Capricorn topics, about taking security, taking care of people. There's going to be a lot of discussions about, oh, what words are they going to listen for? If you read about it, listen for Uranian words, awakenings. Are the leaders awakened to how serious it is about how their clients are feeling about how they're taking action? Yeah, we'll see what goes on with that. Mm.
It's quite curious human nature, and all these CEOs and companies, their first reaction is to build higher walls and get the barbed wire out and extra security rather than looking at the policies that have destroyed so many lives over the years. So it's just trying to, like a death rattle at the end of this, what would you call it, disaster capitalism that we're in right now. So instead of actually revising what they need to do, it's kind of like, let's just build ourselves a fort. So that's going to be quite interesting as we move forward as well.
Yeah, and I wonder if there'll be a lot of protesters outside with Uranus there, with Uranus active. Also, noted reversals as a Uranus word. So notice if there are reversals around, or if you work for a company and the leader's talking about making a reversal of some kind of policy around monetary policy. What are they going to be talking about? Oh, all these tariffs that may or may not be coming. It'll be interesting. And Venus in Pisces square Jupiter retrograde in Gemini is an interesting transit that's happening. You can think about Venus and Jupiter are the benefics. Now they're in square, so there's some kind of tension, but Jupiter wants Pisces. Venus is in Pisces. So there's this receptivity, there's mutual reception where, you can, if you ask for something that you want, you may have some kind of benefactor being willing to provide it to you if you have a well thought out reason, Gemini, for what you need. So this could potentially be a good time to get what you need with this energy. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I really like that. I think my only word of caution for this week, more on a personal level, if you do maybe overspend or go overboard with this Venus square Jupiter, even though you have this nice mutual reception, I think a few days later you might regret any big purchases as Venus conjuncts Saturn and reins in the purse strings a little bit. So maybe being a little bit cautious, maybe not to overdo it, but certainly enjoy that day on January 14th.
Yeah, yeah. That well, some people maybe get getting the credit card bills for what they spent over the holidays and being like, "Oh my God, there's a big." Then you have to have a conversation with your spouse. Could be the Venus Saturn, where you're talking about Saturn difficult things related to the expenses that you made. Mhm. But yeah, it's January 16th, and actually a couple of days before that, where the Sun in Capricorn opposite Mars retrograde in Cancer. Is this just discussions around what went on with Luigi, or is there some kind of event? And I would look to San Francisco with the JP Morgan conference happening that captures our attention, that has a theme of loss with the sextile on Neptune and Pisces. So this is going to be an interesting week to see what is going on, because it's yeah,
Absolutely. I'll
what
keep an eye out for that. That's going to be really interesting. Okay,
yeah.
Celeste, into week 4. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm really interested to see what happens with this Mercury sextile Saturn and Venus on the same day. So Mercury's in Capricorn. So what plans can you put into action that have a Saturnian structure and are going to be beneficial? So this could be a really great day to be doing some serious thinking around 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 things that you want to have to be beneficial. Potentially in Venus rules resources that will give you some resources. A careful planning in order to build this structure. This could be a great day for a meeting with someone else to think about, to brainstorm. To brainstorm, yeah, but try not to be too pessimistic with the Saturn and being in focus. And then Aquarius season starts. Did you want to say anything about that Mercury talking to both Saturn and Venus on the same day?
No, I think the nature of the aspect, I think there's a good time, as you say, to maybe put any structures in place, to think things through. Maybe I think this is a good time to jot any notes down about any future plans. And with Saturn, taking action, but making sure it's practical and it's concrete in a sense. So I like what you're saying with that. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then we move from, and there's going to be big news, like the sun is, as the sun moves between signs, so it's at the last degree of Capricorn, the sun at 29 degrees of Capricorn, a degree of crisis and decay. And then it's moving into Aquarius, a sign of groups and the collective and the future. It's interesting because this is going to be the inauguration in the United States is happening on January 20th, and it's essentially a return to a previous leader. So it'll be interesting to see what the conversations on the news are about how much change is coming or what the future holds, and it's all obscured in some ways because the sun is moving to conjunct Pluto. Pluto can obscure things. There's also, it could be talk about, Sun, Pluto, like something where a leader has a lot of power over the collective. Could be conversations. We also can be talking about aviation with Aquarius, outer space. We could be thinking, oh, are we going to Mars or something like that? Could be talk at the inauguration. And it'll be really interesting to see. But there's a lot of change and reversal talk is going to be coming with Mercury opposite Mars retrograde sextile Uranus retrograde. The retrogrades, we're talking about reversing things or going back to way things were, making change. Uranus retrograde in Taurus. A lot of discussion about in the United States anyway about the land boundaries, the border.
Absolutely. I almost feel like January as a whole is a place of limbo. Of course, we've got a lot of direct planets. Of course, we're in this first chapter of Pluto and Aquarius for the next 20 years. But with some of those retrograde planets, we've still got the Uranus, which will station direct at the end of January. But Mars, it feels like we're just in limbo right now. We're not quite sure what the future holds. And I think there's going to be a lot of jangly energy, for lack of a better word, or anticipation of, and even trepidation for some people of what might be coming ahead. Because as you said, Celeste, we've got this PowerPoint. We're entering Aquarius season. We've got the sun hitting that PowerPoint of 0 to 1 degrees Aquarius. Later next week, after this week, we're going to have Mercury hit that point as well. So I think we're just in this state of limbo and just not quite sure where we're heading yet. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Exactly. Yeah, we don't know, but there's a lot of fear people are going to be feeling. So Mars is retrograde in the sign of Cancer, which is an internal intuitive sign. It is also feeling Mars is in detriment in this sign, excuse me, in fall. And so I think whatever is said, Mercury Oh, whatever is said, Mercury in Capricorn by the leader is going to be around topics that, like, maybe some people are really excited about hearing about, all the protection and actions and like building camps or whatever is being talked about. But other people are going to be feeling a lot of nausea or like internalized fear about what is potentially coming. So yeah, this week is a good time to be protecting your energy and knowing we are in limbo. A lot of stuff will be talked about that will never really actually happen. So be mindful to not let your fears of your personal security and what have you get too out of hand, because we're in a time of transition.
I think that's wonderful advice. And I think speaking to your point before about protests, I wonder if that Mercury opposite Mars around that time is going to speak to more protests in January as we go through. Into week 5. Celeste, your thoughts?
Yeah, Mercury. I love the energy of Mercury sextile Neptune, creative thinking, writing, speaking, and Venus sextile Uranus, where you can be, like this could be a really exciting day for brainstorming. That's great energy. Somebody's creating some kind of masterpiece on that day. And yeah, if you have your own business or working with collaborating, this can be incredible to come up with some exciting ideas. Mm.
I love that. I wonder if anyone who's watching, if you're musically inclined, I think it'd be a great day to write down some lyrics, and they might have an element of surprise in them with that Venus sextile Uranus. So just a great day maybe to chill out and relax and listen to some music.
Yeah, so you may have, and even a couple of days before this, you may have a great time if you go out to a party or listen to me. That's great energy for doing something cultural. Wow. And then Mercury enters Aquarius. So we're moving from maybe like serious conversations about planning and practicality, switch more into the idea phase about what's coming in the future with Aquarius. Ah, mhm.
I,
And
I
but
really,
then
I
Mercury.
really like Mercury in Aquarius, and of course, traditionally it doesn't have any essential dignity, but with the charts I've seen with Mercury in Aquarius, just that on the flip side, forward thinking, like what is possible, what new ways can we plan to move forward. So I kind of like this Mercury going into Aquarius at the end of the month.
I do too. Yes. So, except like what? Yeah, it's people with Mercury and Aquarius. I've found so many people who are just like brilliant thinkers are have this signature. And what is the talk of going on about big groups of people? And or there could also be something about announcements about control over big groups of people with Mercury conjunct Pluto. We know, well, we'll see what happens. I'm not there's going to be all sorts of executive orders and things that are coming for the United States, and really watching the transits that they're related to, I think will be very interesting for people.
Absolutely.
And then we have this new moon in Aquarius, and I wonder if this is going to be related to Aquarius rules groups, so parliaments, Congress. A big thing in the United States is people are going to be watching about these hearings for the cabinet members and that are coming up, and will the Senate be confirming these people? So this is going to be very interesting.
I like new
What
moons for
is seated
planting.
in this new moon? Huh?
Absolutely. I love new moons for planting new seeds. So any ideas that you have at this time, maybe write down, particularly when we had January 6th with the Mercury sextile Neptune, write down these ideas. And as the new moon comes along on the 29th, maybe just plant those seeds and see how you want to grow moving forward.
Exactly. Yeah. And we have a new moon, and then Uranus stations direct. So then we get some, forward motion. I would say, if you don't have to travel on this day, I think that's a good thing to minimize, even like a long road trip, because with the sun trying Jupiter retrograde in Gemini, I feel like, I mean, this is general can be great energy in order to be thinking about expansive and exciting ideas. But I think in the practical sense, we may be looking at travel delays in some kind of way with Uranus changing signs where, uh, yeah, yeah, for whatever reason, it could be storms or what have you. There's delays around things with
Yeah, this
Uranus
is this is a
changing
big
signs.
deal. As we know, with any planet that's stationing to go direct or retrograde, it's usually the loudest planet in the sky. And as we get into the rising sign, we'll see maybe what area of life that might be for you. But collectively, with Uranus still in fixed Earth, I wonder if we'll have some news around. I know we had recently about earthquakes or land or something around those, like maybe financial markets at this time, if there's any policy changes that have been spoken about with all this Mercury action going on. So it'll be quite interesting in terms of the markets, of financial industries. So it'll be something to watch out for at the end of January, I think.
Yeah, what is the earthquake? Is it, yeah, I love how you put that. Is it financial? Is it technological? Or is it just like some mundane, like physical, literal earthquake kind of energy or lightning strike?
Ah,
Mm.
absolutely. Yeah. Sudden and unexpected, Uranus, all of those key words. Absolutely. Well, Celeste, thank you so much for going for the first couple of weeks of the astrological energy. Now we're going to go into our rising signs. To our Aries rising friends. Celeste, your thoughts for this month?
Yeah, so for an Aries rising, the sun is spotlighting your 10th house of career, public standing, reputation. So you're likely going to have some focus on your work going on during this time. So yeah, what do you want to grow in your what do you want to grow in your career? It's a good time also with Pluto in Aquarius in your 11th house to think about, like, how do you want to like, you may get some really great ideas about how you can maybe exert your influence potentially in groups. Do you want to maybe even take on some leadership positions in some kind of group or organization. If you're unhappy with the direction that your country or your business is going, how are you going to network with others of like-minded people in order to have more influence with Pluto in your 11th house of friends, groups, and associations?
That's great
Yeah.
advice. And I think for you, Aries rising, you've got a lot of activity above the horizon. So as Celeste is saying, public standing, career might be in the spotlight as the sun is transiting through your 10th house. So this might be a busy period where you're either out in public, working hard like you always do, Aries rising. But I think if it gets a little bit cumbersome, we're going to have that Venus going into a exaltation in your 12th house. So if life is getting a bit too much, maybe it's a time, maybe take a couple of days to maybe going on a retreat. We've got that Venus going into your 12th. Might be a nice time to take a little break if you can, because you might be feeling, in a sense, for you, Aries rising, that it's one step forward, two steps back. And I think that has to do with your chart ruler going retrograde from a fire sign back into the fourth house, into its fall. So you might have some tension possibly in the home life, and again have that feeling of one step forward, two steps back. So if you're feeling a little bit frustrated, certainly tap into that Venus and maybe take a bit of a retreat if you can and relax a bit more.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, yeah. Really, for Aries, as much as you can, take care of your physical body, because I feel like there's a risk of illness with Mars going back into the sign of Cancer in the retrograde. So really take good care of yourself, because it's gonna be squaring
Gorgeous.
your sun if you're an Aries sun. Yeah. And
Absolutely.
your
And for a long
rising
time,
for
Aries,
Aries risings.
absolutely. And for a long time, Aries rising, you've had Uranus going through your second house whole sign. So as Uranus stations to go direct, maybe there's some unexpected news around maybe your finances or possessions. So maybe to keep an eye out on that as Uranus stations to go direct. Celeste, what are your thoughts for Aries rising of the nodes switching from their axis of the first and the seventh to the sixth and the 12th?
So as the North Node has been going through your first house, amplifying your identity, how other people see you, your physical vitality, I feel like, oh, there is this last year and a half has been a big year for Aries risings, where you have learned a lot about yourself and how you are seen through the lens of the South Node going through your seventh house of partners, where like some ways in which you relate to other people have really been brought up to the surface for you to deal with. And so now you, as the nodes move out of your first and seventh house, the seats of power, into the cadent houses, I feel like this is a time to really integrate these lessons. Maybe the North Node bringing up in the house of self-undoing. This can be a time where you're really working on making the changes necessary and changing your routines and rituals in order to, yeah, if you learn the lessons, this can be a really powerful time of self-discovery, of working on being more of a balanced in terms of your health and well-being.
I love that, Celeste, that keyword of balanced and taking time out for yourself. And I think for me, it just reinforces that point of if you are a bit fried or you've overdone things recently, as that North Node goes into your 12th house and Venus pops in its exaltation into the 12th, I think for me, just reinforces that. Maybe just take a few days, maybe take a bit of a break and, try recuperate, recharge the batteries for you, Aries rising.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great time. Now, with the South Node going into your sixth house of things that go wrong with your health, it's going to be really important that you tame self-undoing tendencies. This is a really great time for you to work on that kind of stuff.
Wonderful. Great advice. Okay, Celeste, into our Taurus rising friends. What are your thoughts?
So for Taurus rising, the sun is going through your ninth house. So the ninth house spotlighting themes around your beliefs, around what you know to be true. You may be thinking about how can I expand myself? What are some new things you'd like to learn? Uh, Maybe taking classes or what have you can be things. Are you there places you want to travel to? Our ninth house topics. Yeah. Are there any legal things you need to get into order? That could be something that you're focused on. Pluto in your 10th house. Are you going to be doing more traveling for your work? How are you like there's probably something where you're feeling like you have this drive or this deep subconscious need to make a mark in terms of like building your legacy. Or I'm a Taurus, I've been talking about legacy stuff these last few weeks. So this could be something with Pluto in your 10th house career sector for the next 20 years. What mark do you want to be making? Could be themes, things that you're thinking about. And the North Node is moving sector of your 12th house. Now it's moving back into your 11th, it's moving into your 11th house, amplifying energy around groups and organizations and what are you going to do in these areas. And with Venus moving into that sector, ooh, there can be really wonderful opportunities for you to connect with people in order to grow in this realm. So 9 through 11, there's going to be a lot of thoughts for Taurus about pushing your energy out into the collective to make your mark, to dealing with other people. And if you're feeling like hibernating, I don't think it's going to be as easy as you want it to be, because Mars is going to be moving back into your third house. Like, I feel like there's going to be some busyness that you have to attend to with these short trips and whatnot. Whether you like, there just has to be done. So getting to the airport early if you have to travel is a big thing, because there could be delays on the road throughout the month, Taurus.
Wonderful advice. And I think for you, Taurus rising, as Celeste has been talking about, you've got the preponderance of planets above the horizon. So it's going to be social, it's going to be active. As Celeste was talking about, we've got the ninth house topics highlighted with the sun transiting through the 10th house also highlighted. And what I like what you said, Celeste, is as we have the node shifting and the north node goes into your 11th house, you're going to have your chart ruler, Venus, move into the 11th as well, wonderfully exalted. So I love your advice, Celeste, talking about any group activities or any new group activities you'd like to be joined in. And I think this would be a great time to work with others, big crowds of people, or if you want to lead as well, this might be a great time. And as Pluto will be in the 10th house for the next 20 years, maybe you can take some leadership roles in those positions with groups of people. And as Celeste, you're saying, we've got the Mars retrograding back into the third house. So you might have, if you work from home, a flood of emails coming through in January, a lot of busy work, maybe a lot of short trips around the local community. The one thing I might say as a word of caution, if you have late degrees of Taurus rising, just watching out for that Uranus as it stations to go direct, keeping an eye out for any sudden or unexpected events, especially if your ascendant degree is near that Uranus, just to watch out maybe for the roads or anything that you're doing around the house that might have a sudden accident that's connected to the body. I think would be my just a word of caution there, I think, for you, Taurus rising.
Absolutely. Yes. Especially, yeah, around 23 degrees. If your ascendant is right there, be really mindful, especially 5 days before and after a planet changes directions. The energy is really intensified. Yeah, and Mars going back that day that Mars goes back into Cancer, this could be I see like a Taurus person slipping and falling on water. So be careful. In your kitchen, you're in the kitchen or in the bath, be extra careful in the bath, especially Venus to Saturn and Pisces too. Tauruses, we got to be careful. Taurus risings and Taurus suns.
Absolutely. Wonderful advice. Fantastic. Okay, into our Gemini rising friends. Celeste, your thoughts.
Okay, so Gemini rising friends, you could think about the sun is going through your eighth house, so deep psychological processes. And I think there's going to be things brought up from your psyche, the shadow energies, the things we'd rather disown about ourselves, they're going to be spotlighted for you. But I feel like it's for your better good with Jupiter in your first house. So, like, you're going to be learning some of the things about the truth about how you take action, about how you are seen, and maybe some really great learnings about how you use your words, and there could be energy for you to be making some adjustments around that. I think is very positive. This could be nice for your career in terms of when Venus goes into Pisces. Like maybe you'll be getting a raise. Maybe you'll be tapped because with Jupiter in your first sign, like your first house, a benefactor can be like recommending you to take on to get a project, to have an opportunity, that sort of thing. So be ready to step into some power with the sun going through your eighth house as well. Are you holding yourself back? Are you fearful about being spotlighted? Because like it or not, you may get some real opportunities presented to yourself over this month. That could be that maybe take on more responsibility with Saturn in your 10th house, but could be very beneficial with Venus there as well.
Yeah, Celeste, I would agree with you. If is it time to ask for a raise, this would be it. Celeste is saying, Venus gets its exaltation, and if you have your midheaven in the 10th there, whole sign, great time to add to a meeting and to ask for a raise, or you might be in the public spotlight for a brief time. Maybe some applause comes your way. And I think for you, Gemini Rising, your chart ruler, it's in its detriment in the seventh, and it'll be squaring that Neptune at some point. So I'm maybe a little bit cautious of any BS that you might get from work, possibly, or work colleagues or one-on-one partners. I think that's something maybe to be cautious about. And of course, as that Mars has been going through the third house, maybe you've been busy with emails and activity or short trips around. And but I like what you're saying, Celeste, about that. Maybe added responsibility is that Saturn for a long time is going through the 10th house. Now, this can go two ways. Either maybe you're having issues with authority figures, any bosses that you have, or on the flip side, it may be a time, as Celeste is saying, that you're taking on extra roles and responsibilities. Absolutely. Celeste,
Mhm.
any thoughts about that Uranus station into direct in the 12th?
Yeah, in your 12th house of self-undoing and secret enemies. So you may get some like some shock. Like maybe Bob in accounting said something to Sally in the warehouse about you. So you may be finding out that you have someone who's that you need to keep your eye on.
Absolutely. And the last thing I'll
Yeah.
say that I forgot to mention, as that North Node will be going into your 10th house, just reinforcing as that Venus comes into the 10th, the highlighting of career, and maybe thinking to yourself what you want to do moving forward, whether you want to climb the ladder or try new things in your career and work life. That's something to note as well as we get into the new year. Wonderful. Okay, Celeste, into our Cancer rising friends. Your
This
thoughts?
is me. I'm a Cancer rising. So So the sun is spotlighting your seventh house. So your one-on-one relationships, whether that is your love partners, your best friend type relationships, your clients, if you have your own business, there's going to be a spotlight on these themes. And yeah, as the South Node leaves the sign of Libra. So for a lot of Cancer risings, a lot of things about your most private self, about your family, and about how you were raised were brought up to the surface with the South Node kind of digs things up as well. And you've had a big year with your career, most likely, with the North Node being in Aries in your 10th house. Hopefully, it was positive and you had a lot of great opportunities. But it seems like if you've been doing like a lot of work, with Mars going back into your sign and retrograde, this is a great time for Cancer risings to be reframing how you expend your energy because your career ruler is retrograde. And how you take action. Maybe you're thinking about, do you need the sun in the seventh house to partner in some way in order to achieve all the things that you want to get achieved done? Are there any power struggles around eighth house topics around like resources, or the if you're married or in a serious relationship, about the sharing of responsibilities, especially since you've had this amplification in your career sector over the last year and a half? And get ready for there to be like more opportunities for learning or travel and things like that, with the North Node going into your ninth house. But then like there were some responsibilities with Saturn there. Yeah, this is going to be an interesting time for you, Cancer.
I love that, Celeste. And I really like how the ninth house is highlighted, particularly as we go into this month. Of course, as you've said, Celeste, we've got responsibility here with Saturn. We've got Neptune up there as well. But as Venus goes through the ninth house, is wonderfully exalted, especially when it starts making nice trines to the ascendant. It's a Jupiter-ruled ninth house. So eventually when Jupiter goes direct, that's going to be interesting as well. But all these themes of, it could be traveling, it could be traveling overseas, or further learning. If you're have just started maybe your studies in astrology, or you're in the middle of it, I think it's a great time to put the structures in place with that Saturn, but it'll also, I think, be a pleasant time of studying with that Venus going through the ninth house. And on top of that, to compound these ninth house topics, we're going to have the North Node go into the ninth house to highlight those topics for quite a long time. So this is a great time, whether you're in the middle of studies or you're thinking about going into studying any higher education or astrology itself. I think this is a wonderful time for Cancer risings. The only word of caution I'll have for Cancer rising is if you have late degrees, or even to about 20 degrees of Cancer rising, watch out as that Mars comes back over into your first house, particularly if it touches that ascendant. Watch out for, just maybe accidents around the home, being extra careful with knives in the kitchen, or when you're being out on the road as that Mars goes back into your first house.
Yes. My rising, I'm going to get that Mars over my rising and be really, really careful
So
about
absolutely. So watch
slowing
out.
down, being extra careful, looking at the ground as you're walking. And
Absolutely. Great
a
advice.
great time to really boost your immune system and your protectiveness. Yeah, be very protective about your physical body, your immune system, and staying healthy, Cancer.
Absolutely. And I think the last note I've got on Cancer Rising, as we have Uranus stationing to go direct towards the end of the month, maybe in the topics of the 11th house, it might be shake-ups around groups you're involved in. Maybe you decide you're sick of one group and want to try something different. but just watching out for maybe unexpected events around those 11th house topics. Maybe you change what your goals and aspirations are as we go further into the year. So that's something to take a look at as well.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Okay, into our Leo rising friends. Celeste, your thoughts?
Yeah, so Leo rising, the sun is going through your sixth house. The sixth house is routines and rituals, small pets. If you have employees or people who who live on your property, they could be spotlighted, and things that go wrong with your health. So preventative health is a great thing for you to be thinking about. If you haven't gone to the doctor for a while, absolutely, this is a great time to do that. Thinking about your workout routines. Mars is retrograde in your first house. So, especially early degree, people who have early degree Leo risings, be very mindful about extra careful with fire and knives specifically. But yeah, taking extra care about your physical body to avoid getting sick or having any kind of accidents. This could be a really great time for you to be thinking about how you're going to improve your health and well-being. You may be undergoing lots of change in your one-on-one relationships with Pluto in your seventh house. You're going to be having potentially people having a powerful influence on you. Somebody could be coming into your life or they already be there, but that's going to be a big topic over the next several years for you about relationships, power dynamics, and if you're some of your Leo traits may be with Pluto and Aquarius, maybe really some some lessons coming up about how you assert yourself or shine your light or do like take actions for yourself versus the group, where we're moving into more of the energy of wanting to be more equitable. Are you a diva or a royalty in your own mind? You may be checked by others.
That's a really great point, Celeste, because I think for you, Leo rising, your preponderance of planets are on the Western hemisphere, the right-hand side of the chart. So you are dealing not only with this Pluto for 20 years, maybe revising relationships that you've either had or are about to have, but you've got all of these planets on the right-hand side of the chart dealing with others. So whether that's others in the immediate environment or others in your work life. So it's really it's the self versus integrating other people, I think, is a theme for you, and especially as we go into the new year. And your chart ruler will highlight in the sixth house. So as Celeste was saying before, maybe taking a look at maybe your work routines or health. So maybe this is a time where you start the gym again. You've got that new year, new you type of theme. So highlighting the sixth house, maybe it's a new exercise regime that might come into play. I think for you, Leo rising in with that Saturn being a bit of a nuisance in the eighth house, if you've been struggling possibly with trying to borrow money or with issues maybe with shared resources, what I do like about that Venus who gets its exaltation as it goes through your eighth house is that that might be a bit of a reprieve. So it might be a better time if you need to borrow a bit of money, or maybe things in terms of shared resources improve for a time. Maybe your partner gets an extra pay bump or something along those lines. That Venus, I feel for you, Leo rising, be quite nice as it goes through the eighth house. In terms of your Uranus is going to be stationed in direct in your 10th house. So later in the month, as Celeste was saying before, a couple of days before or a couple of days after that stationing to go direct, maybe just keeping an eye on the themes of your career or reputation, particularly if you have the midheaven around those degrees. Maybe there might be a shake-up in those areas of life. I don't know, Celeste, any thoughts about that Uranus?
Oh yeah, definitely a surprise could be coming at work for you, or yeah, and be or the 10th house also is the house of the mother.
Mhm.
So making sure checking in on your mother, so making sure she's okay. Some people might be finding out or being awakened to. Uranus can awaken us to, oh, my mother's really slowed down. Or maybe your mother has a new look. I mean, there could be all sorts of things. Yeah.
Expect
But
the unexpected with Uranus.
expect the unexpected. Uh-huh.
Absolutely. And the last thing I'll say about shared resources, as the North Node goes into your eighth and the South Node into the second, there may be, as you get deeper into the month, some issues around the second eighth house axis, around your possessions, your maybe finances versus your shared resources. So that's just something to keep an eye on as you go further into the month and really for a long time after that period.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, wonderful. Into our Virgo rising friends. Celeste, your thoughts?
Yeah, so Virgo risings, the sun is going through your fifth house of good fortune, creativity, children, the things we do that we enjoy and love for pleasure. That's where Venus has her joy. So, yeah, like thinking about Virgo, are you taking out enough time for pleasure, or are you spending too much time bogged down in work or worry or all of those kinds of things? So, this is a really great time for you to set some intentions, and you may be doing things in a new way because the South Node going into Virgo is a huge deal for you, because it's going to be going into, it's in your first house, and that is the house of our physical body, our vitality, how others see us, what our soul is rising to. So with the South Node does a clearing where we're going to be, things will be brought up to your conscious attention, and you're going to be making decisions about letting go of certain things. Like some Virgo risings are going to be getting into new relationships with the North Node in your seventh house, where there's this amplification of your attention on these one-on-one relationships. Really thinking about your health and well-being. I mean, Virgos in general are typically careful about the ingredients they are bringing in, and but there may be a call for you to have some extra attention to your well-being. And ooh, Saturn in your seventh house, in terms of be careful, if you stay away from people sneezing and what have you, because like you could get like a cold from someone else. That could be your ah the South Node goes into Virgo, and I got sick. Could be something that you're saying around January 11th. So be extra mindful about that. This can be a time of growth at work with Jupiter in your, it's been in your 10th house since last May. But there may be some opportunities coming up. Really notice what happens when Venus squares Jupiter. What is being offered to you by potentially someone else, a one-on-one partner? Maybe your partner gets a raise or something like that. Maybe your partner has some nice benefits or blessings coming in as well. Mm.
Great points and great advice. I think for you, Virgo rising, I think my advice would be to make sure you're filling your own cup up before you fill other people's. You are very attentive and you do help others. You've got a preponderance of planets on the Western hemisphere of your chart. So you're probably around the holiday periods, probably being, attentive to children or family members and others in your immediate environment, or having to deal with issues at work. So I think for you, Virgo rising, just making sure your batteries are charged and making sure, as Celeste said before, that you're taking care of yourself before you help others. I think that's going to be a real key for you. And bringing up the relationship issues, that's going to be really interesting. I really love that Venus, which is going to gain its exaltation as it goes through the seventh house. So if that Saturn has been troublesome for one-on-one relationships, that Venus is going to be nice if you go out on a date night with a partner, if you have one, or if you're on the dating scene. This is going to be a great month to maybe go out and find somebody new. You reinforce that with the North Node going into the seventh house. So a lot of relationship topics coming up, but just making sure you're filling up your own cup before you fill other people's up. And what I think Virgo rising will be helpful for you this month as your chart ruler, Mercury goes out of its detriment, out of the fourth, and goes into a more stable sign for you. As it goes into Capricorn, it's going to make a nice trine to your ascendant degree, whatever that might be, to a certain degree. So I think you're going to enjoy the chart ruler moving into the fifth house and maybe having some more fun and joy if the holiday period has been a time where you've just been either cooking or attentive to all the other people. Maybe this is a nice month to maybe for you to take a break and have enjoyment yourself. Have some pleasure and creativity, I think, for you, Virgo rising.
I love
Well,
that. And you're going to be getting some lessons with the South Node in Virgo about how you are of service to other people. Is there an element of control around? Yeah, so be prepared for reflections about how you take action and maybe letting go of some of that and putting yourself first in some ways. You probably have learned some about how your actions are self-undoing with Mars spending a lot of time in your 12th house. And you may be, as it goes into your 11th house, retrogrades back into your 11th house, you may be deciding, I need to sever and separate myself from some of my duties or promises in a group setting, and focus more on taking care of yourself.
wonderful advice. I love that, Celeste. And picking up on what you're saying with the South Node, which will be going through your first house, maybe some of that service to others is draining. And as Celeste is saying, you have to reevaluate and maybe have to cut certain people off who are maybe draining your batteries. So I love that, Celeste. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Wonderful. Okay, into our Libra rising friends. Celeste, your thoughts?
So Libra rising, the sun is going through your fourth house. This is home, family, foundations, also your most private self. This, I would love Libra risings to, as much as you can, let the year start off slowly. Your chart ruler is going into its exaltation of Pisces. It's exalted. I think you may even want to have a little party on January 11th. It could just be a party for one, where you celebrate everything you've learned about yourself while the South Node has been in Libra. All the things that have come up to your conscious attention about how you partner, about how you find fairness, how you find balance and equanimity in your life. What have you let go of? Have you let go of some people-pleasing tendencies or going along to get along? Have you made some more strives to bring some fairness and balance into your relationships, or maybe even spending some time more focused on you and yourself? Because the work concludes as the South Node leaves Libra for 18 plus years. And then starts excavating in your 12th house. But I feel like you can take just a deep breath, get centered, get focused on yourself, fourth house, like Pluto with the sun there, and Pluto in your fifth house of, changing your self-expression. I like to think of the fifth house as well as how you express yourself in a way where maybe you're being some more courageous and focused on making sure your needs are met as well, not just taking care of everyone else. And like with the Saturn in your sixth house, it could have been caused, some of these changes you've made could have been caused by like work things, health things, just a really good time, I think, for self-reflection. And when Uranus goes direct, you may have like these incredible awakenings around eighth house topics about shadows, about intimacy, and all of this sort of thing.
Absolutely wonderful advice, Celeste. And as a Libra rising, everything you're saying is ringing true for me. So absolutely wonderful. And I actually wanted to pick up on what you were saying there, the people-pleasing tendency, which I certainly have. And you let us know in the comments, Libra rising, if you have that as well. But I've learned a lesson in this. And I think for us, Libra rising, we can finally say goodbye to that south node going through our first house. Because for me, it's been awfully draining. And what I've learned in terms of the access between self and others is that in the last few months, I've been a lot more direct than I usually am. I usually use a lot of flowery language in emails. And actually, nowadays, I've learned that lesson and I'm a bit more direct. If it doesn't work for my schedule, I just say no. And that's difficult for a Libra rising like myself to do. But it's, as Celeste is saying, it's learning those lessons. And I think that's what probably we might have learned as the nodes are starting to switch. Now, as the North Node goes into the sixth house, we've had Saturn there for a long time. Saturn is now direct at this point. And for me, you let us know in the comments as well, but I've started a new health regime. So I've increased my attendance at the gym. I've also finally started my new diet by, cutting down on some of the carbs and the sugar and some of the more unhealthy aspects. Of course, that's difficult to do around holiday periods, but that's something I have worked on. So you let us know, Libra Rising, if that's something that you're having to deal with as well, whether to redevise your health routines, all of those kind of key phrases. And as Celeste is saying, as our chart ruler is wonderfully exalted as it goes through the sixth house, this is a great time for a new year, new you. If you do want to start the gym again or start a new, maybe taking some pleasure in either work or taking pleasure in fitness regime. So if you're not a gym type of person, maybe just going on nice long walks or something along those lines as we get into January. And Celeste, you also talked about Uranus stationing direct. So for us, it might bring up some of those eighth house topics and maybe some sudden surprises around shared resources or any of those topics surrounding the eighth house, and to keep an eye out for that as well.
Yeah, taxes.
Could well be, yeah, taxes as we go through, or yeah, unexpected events around those times as we have Mars retrograding back into our 10th house. Maybe there's more energy pushed into the area of life. But as Celeste is saying before, if work or your career does get a bit cumbersome, making sure we're taking care of ourselves first and then using that energy to push out into society.
Love that.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay, into our Scorpio rising friends. Celeste, your thoughts?
Yeah, for Scorpio risings, the sun is going through your third house of short trips, communication, siblings, neighbors. This is probably going to be a very busy month for you. Whenever your third house is highlighted, it tends to be, there can be a lot of like just little errands that need to get done. Great time to get your car serviced if you haven't done that in a while. Changing the batteries in your smoke detectors may be something that you want to do. Especially with Mars at the top of your chart. Could be something that you do. You may have power dynamics or like unearthing or uncovering things around your home life or early childhood. Could be a big thing that comes up during this time. Really, because Pluto in your fourth house, really notice what's coming to your conscious attention about your feelings around your personal security and power dynamics. And that Mars opposite Pluto is happening in your 10th house and your fourth house. So what's going on there? Are there demands and needs and energy and focus at work that's causing like some power struggles at home? Really pay attention to that. Or is it something going on between your parents that has intensity, or your boss being very demanding or coming back to you like a reversal? Notice if there are any reversals around the work energy with Mars retrograde in your 10th house. And if you didn't have to travel, and when Mars goes back into Cancer, suddenly you're going on some trip. Yeah, the CEO is putting you on their shoulders at the JP Morgan conference in order to protect themselves. Yeah, yeah. It's something that I don't know if this is too controversial to talk about, but there's been talk on the internet about Elon Musk. He's going through all these meetings. Everywhere he's going, he's got this child on his shoulders, his youngest child. as though they're almost like a human shield. Like Stephen King wrote a novel, The Dead Zone, where the protagonist, who he predicted Trump, like, but pulls a child in front of him to protect himself. And I don't know, just Elon Musk having that kid on his shoulders all the time really reminds me of that. That is a total tangent. Uh, is it too
I love
controversial?
it. And I wonder if there's a lot of Scorpio risings out there who are big Stephen King fans. So I'd ask that question. Let us know in the comments.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting. I'm getting for that. Yeah, Mars and Cancer using like a Scorpio, like, ooh, what is that power play underneath the surface that we're not seeing with Mars? Yeah, the defensive weapon of the child on the shoulders. Yeah. And Uranus going direct in your seventh house. There may be a surprise from from a partner. They could get a surprise raise or a surprise you find out if you work for the government, people are going to be getting a lot of surprises about their jobs with the United States government being totally attempts to totally remodel it.
Great advice. And I think for you, Scorpio rising, just being mindful of taking action, I would say until at least your chart ruler Mars goes direct further down the line, because if you're the type who likes to keep things private, you've got a preponderance of planets below the horizon, which will aid in that. But because your chart ruler is quite visible in the public arena, just double thinking any actions that you might take, because that's going to be quite visible with your chart ruler in the 10th house. So Celeste was saying before, any issues around career, and it's also going to go back into its fall in the 9th house, but it's still going to be visible. So just being extra cautious on any actions that you take moving forward. I think what's interesting as the North Node goes into your 5th house, maybe hopefully bringing back some joy. If its life has been a bit cumbersome at times at the moment with the South and the North Node in the 6th and 12th house axis, whether there's been any health issues that have come up. I think this switch of nodes might bring, especially with the North Node in the 5th house, maybe bring some creativity and joy back to your life if that's been an issue for you. And picking up on what Celeste is saying, any issues around partnerships, whether that's significant others or business partners with that Uranus stationing to go direct at the end of the month, maybe there's some surprises around those topics of the 7th house that Celeste has been talking about. But I think with that Jupiter still going through that 8th house, I don't see any financial issues at this time, depending on what else is going on in your natal chart. But I do like that benefic, greater benefic going through the 8th house for you for quite some time.
Could
I think
be
till
finding
June.
out you're going to be a grandparent or a parent with Venus going into Pisces. Could be a positive pregnancy test for someone in your orbit. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And with that Venus gain is exaltation in the 5th house, then just reinforces those themes of creative enjoyment. Yes, we've got Saturn, the greater malefic there, but maybe it's something that's quite constructive, maybe a constructive sport or something that you enjoy as you go deeper into the month.
And it's so interesting. We're talking about Capricorn is the big thing. So there's all of this practicality and groundedness. We're talking about work and all of this stuff. But the sun is going into through your third house. Maybe at the post office, at a local restaurant, you can change your life with a smile and a hello. With Venus going into your 5th house, if you're single and ready to mingle, you can meet someone new. So you could, yeah, keep that in mind, Scorpio. If you're looking for love or romance, this could be a time where you unexpectedly meet someone. That could be your January 30th surprise. Ah, Sun trine Jupiter. Ah.
I love that, Celeste. If you're single and ready to mingle, maybe this is the time. Okay, into our Sagittarius rising, friends. Celeste, your thoughts?
So the sun is going through your second house of income, of values. you can be thinking about, ooh, the money, your money situation. What are your goals for this coming year? Could be really on what you're thinking about. If you work in the government or something related to the government, you could be really be a focus because what does that mean with a new administration coming in? Are some thoughts. And with Pluto in your third house, I want you to be mindful about letting yourself get too carried away with any kind of paranoia, worst case situations, and that sort of thing going on. With Uranus in your sixth house, that could be something that, ooh, some surprise or reversal comes up related to work at the end of the month. So keep that in mind. You can grow through partnerships with others, and yeah, great time to be having a conversation. One-on-one conversations can really bring you some new perspectives or balance around that. And maybe your themes of beautifying your home or spending time with family with Venus in your fourth house.
Absolutely. And I wonder if the themes of relationships come up again as you've got your chart ruler going through the seventh house for a period of time now. Doesn't go direct for a while, that Jupiter, but with that Mars going retrograde back into the eighth house and the Sun transiting the second, I wonder if you maybe had a conversation recently before about maybe shared resources with a partner. And as that Mars goes back into the eighth, maybe it's a conversation you have to have again, maybe something around, again, shared resources or people, maybe a partner spending money or you spending money. And with that Mercury having gone through the first house for a period of time, going retrograde back and forth, I think there's a lot on your mind right now for Sagittarius rising. So it might be, as Celeste is saying, important conversations with partners, particularly more significant relationships and partners. But if you're free and single, maybe with Jupiter going through the seventh, the chart ruler, maybe it is a good time to go out and to seek somebody at this time. You're going to have the North Node going into your fourth house. So it's going to highlight the area of maybe home and family, maybe Sagittarius rising. I've got many friends who can't sit still with that mutable rising. So they live all around the world and they constantly move. So with that North Node going back into the fourth, I wonder if it's a time maybe where you're questioning where you belong or some of the issues around maybe home and family. And if you decide to do something different, particularly with that South Node as it goes into your 10th house, maybe it's a change of if you're feeling a bit cumbersome in your career or where you're heading, maybe it's a time where you start to evaluate what you're doing in life and whether you want to make a fresh start or do something new, which is going to be quite interesting for you, Sagittarius rising. And yes, with Uranus stationing to go direct at the end of the month, going to bring up six house topics. So this could be related to work if you're a subordinate to a certain degree, or it could bring in issues maybe of health, maybe something to keep an eye on as it doesn't see your ascendant in the sixth house. So yeah, any more thoughts there, Celeste?
No, I think that is fantastic.
Wonderful. And I think with a nice planet going through, got the lesser benefic Venus going its exaltation through the fourth house. So again, bringing up, reinforcing those fourth house themes of where you see your home and family being and all the topics that arise there. Wonderful. Okay, into our Capricorn rising friends. Celeste, your thoughts?
So the sun is going through your first house. This is your annual time where there's a real spotlight on yourself, your physical well-being, your vitality. What are you going to do to make sure, especially if you're a Capricorn who loves overworking, what are you going to do to make sure you take care of your health and vitality throughout this time? And there's could be some really, it's important to consider your one-on-one relationships because Mars is going to retrograde back into your seventh house, and a retrograde can stir up some difficulties and Mars conflict. So are you having any conflict with your partner about chores or anything around the house, Cancer rules the home, or family stuff? So just be aware that some stuff may be coming in focus, and what are you going to do proactively to bring some positive energy into your relationship. Maybe you want to start thinking about talking sweetly and doing leaving little nub notes or doing things that are loving on like a daily basis with your partner, with Venus going into your third house. Speaking sweetly can be a way to help mitigate any of those conflicts that come back into focus, is what I'm thinking for you. And the South Node moving out of your career house could be great. Maybe you've changed jobs. Hopefully, hopefully there's something going on where it has been you positively letting go of some things related to your career status and reputation to bring more balance into your life.
I think that's wonderful advice, Celeste, and picking up on the nodes shifting. I know this is a generalization, but all my Capricorn Rising friends are just incredibly hard workers. But sometimes for you, Capricorn Rising, sometimes you work so hard and the rewards are quite minimal at times. So I think if this has been a cumbersome time with that South Node having been through the 10th house and you're not getting either the recognition all the rewards for all of your efforts, I think this might be a time, as Celeste is saying, where the tides start to shift as we switch out of the 10th house. And maybe, as Celeste is saying, maybe if you've changed careers or maybe you've negotiated more with authorities or higher ups, that you're actually getting to a point where you're actually rewarded for all of the hard work all of you Capricorn Rising do. And I think what helps here is that your chart ruler, that Saturn, for a long time now has gone direct. Because we're recording this December 19th, and it went direct a couple of weeks ago. So I think having that Saturn out of its retrograde phase direct is going to help with moving forward for you. And I think, yeah, we've got the season, we've got your sun going through the first house, highlighting the body, highlighting appearances. So if you want to go and treat yourself to maybe a bit of a spa day to highlight, to beautify, I think this is a great month for you to do so as you go through. And Celeste, as you're saying, we've got that wonderful Venus going into its exaltation in the third house. So love notes, letters, all of those kind of things is going to be a nice time, I think, for you. We do have Uranus station to go direct in the fifth house. So this could bring up surprising topics, maybe around children, if you have any, or maybe some of those dynamics to keep an eye out on at the end of January, if that comes up. And that's about it. I don't know if there's anything else I see.
I think the Venus sextile Uranus that transit could be really fun and exciting. If you're single, like meeting someone new, or bringing some spice into your relationship and excitement if your partner.
Absolutely. And
Also
maybe
could be surprise pregnancy. I have to go to the drugstore to get a pregnancy test with Venus and Pisces, sextile Uranus.
that's a great point. And actually bringing up relationships, you're going to have Mars retrograding back into the seventh house. So this might bring up on the shadow side if there's been any conflict with partners, particularly significant partners, or maybe one-on-one business relations. If this is a story that hasn't quite completed yet, maybe with Mars going back into the seventh, maybe that's something you're going to have to revisit to resolve. That's something to keep an eye out as well. Okay, into our Aquarius rising friends. Celeste, your thoughts?
So this, if you can, with the sun spotlighting your 12th house of solitude if you can, and isolation, if you can take some time to start the year slowly, Aquarius, I think that would be a wonderful thing to do. Really evaluating any self-undoing things. Pluto is in your first house, so you could be, it's a great time for some powerful transformations of yourself and your identity and how other people see you. Could be something that is in focus for yourself. Maybe you have some big goals for yourself. Maybe, and it could be like bodybuilding or something going on for you. And with Mars retrograde in the seventh house, really notice if there's some power struggles between you and your partners, and how there could be a spotlight on how you're the cause of your own problems, I think, with the sun in your 12th house. So maybe this will give you some perspective so that you can, because you're a fixed sign, that you can maybe make some changes and around yourself, how you communicate with Jupiter in your fifth house, that you have some reflection about how two things can both be true, and making some changes with that, I think could be really, this is going to be a really powerful time for you to be evaluating how you take action with a lot of the energy in your first and second houses.
Absolutely wonderful advice. And I think for you, Aquarius Rising, I've got a feeling finances and shared resources are going to come up to the forefront this month, particularly as we have the North Node, which is going to be going into your second house, and the South Node in the eighth. We're going to have the second eighth house axis. And with the wonderfully exalted Venus coming through into the second house, this might be a time where that you get an extra source of income or a boost in income. This might be a pleasant time because, of course, we've had your chart ruler in the second for some time now. So if that has been an issue or an area of contention in terms of finances or shared resources, I think it's a theme that's going to come back up. But I think that Venus is going to help out somewhat as she transits through the second house. And picking up on what you're saying, Celeste, about this Pluto story, well, it's not going back into Capricorn again for, well, we certainly won't see it ever again in our lifetimes, but that Pluto is going to be a huge story for the next 20 years for you, Aquarius Rising. And being mindful, especially if you've got early degrees, Aquarius Rising, just seeing what themes are coming up for you, because this is going to be a very pivotal time for Aquarius Rising, especially over the next 2 decades. I think for you as well, Aquarius Rising, with the not quite the Aquarius season yet. So if you do need to take a bit of reprieve, a bit of work behind the scenes, maybe take a bit of a break with the sun highlight in the 12th house. If work is getting a bit cumbersome, maybe this is a time where you can step back a little bit, maybe work behind the scenes, or if you're in an office, take a bit of time to chill out before it becomes Aquarius season when the sun eventually transits through your first house. With Uranus stationing to go direct at the end of the month, it's going to be very, very interesting in terms of the topics around home and family. So keep an eye out on those themes as that Uranus goes direct at the end of the month. And yes, that's going to be quite interesting. Celeste, as you said, with that Mars retrograding back into the sixth, being mindful of health and routines, because we're going to have the sixth and the 12th house axis highlighted with the sun in the 12th and the Mars going back into the sixth. So keeping in mind on topics of any health concerns or issues that you might have that could rear its head at this moment in time. And that's for Aquarius Rising. Wonderful. Okay, into our final, last but not least, our Pisces Rising friends. Celeste, your thoughts?
So Pisces rising, the sun is going through your 11th house of good fortune, hopes and dreams, groups, organizations, and friends. So there may be some spotlighting on these themes. And with Venus going into your first house, you may be getting some unexpected opportunities and find yourself being in the spotlight for some reason, or or people are saying nice things about you, or people are finding you extra charming or attractive, or things like that. Venus to your first house is a really nice transit. You may just be looking better, feeling better, all of that sort of thing. And yeah, with Uranus going direct in your third house, this could be a good time to make sure if anything's going on with your car that you take care of it right away. Or there could be like an exciting new restaurant opening up near to you, or some new business that, you get I think it'll be maybe a nice surprise. Or yeah, something from a sibling could come up with this. Yeah. Especially when Venus is sextile Uranus. Notice what happens. You could get a surprise gift around that time. Now, Mars retrograding back into your fifth house of, well, children, things you do for pleasure. I want you to be careful about risk taking. I wouldn't really go skiing for the first time ever, or do the hardest. Oh, let me try doing one of those double, triple axles. No, let's not do that with Mars retrograde in your fifth house. Be mindful, be careful with risk taking. It's coming to
Oh,
me.
wonderful advice. And I think for you, Pisces rising, I think it's been, especially for a long period of time, with that Saturn and Neptune going through your first house. I bet you'll be glad to see the back of those planets as it's been good for your first house. But I love what Celeste is saying. As that wonderful benefic Venus gets its exaltation as it goes through your first house. So if this is a time where we can go and beautify, maybe go and take a spa day. If life has been a bit of hard work and cumbersome, maybe it's nice to go and either go shopping or something around, something to do with the body, something to go and either go and cleanse, again, go and take a spa day, especially with the troublesome Saturn and Neptune for so long going through the first house. Just treat yourself, I would say, for Pisces rising, especially if you've been through the ringer. Go and treat yourself as Venus goes through your first house. And I think with the nose switching, going out of your financial axis of the second and the eighth, I think as that North Node goes into the first house, it might bring some vitality over a period of time as that North Node, especially as it goes over your ascendant, depending what your ascendant degree is, maybe just bring in an extra element of vitality for you, Pisces rising. And if you've been needing that, I think this is going to be a great period as the North Node goes through the first house. What else is going on for you? As Celeste is saying, yes, we've got Mars retrograding back into the fifth. So it could bring up the topics of children. If there's something that you want to do sports related, it's a great outlet. Mars taking action. Maybe it's a new year, new you, where you maybe start out at the gym or take up a new sport. Even though that Mars is going to be retrograde, it's still good to go back and revise and use those Mars actions and keywords to work on the body, work on the self, especially as that Venus is going through the first house. You've also got the Sun highlighting the 11th house, so maybe this is a great time for group projects or group activities as that area of life is highlighted. And Celeste, as is already mentioned, as we have Uranus stationing to go direct, maybe either you get some surprising news, maybe via email, or maybe you surprise yourself by saying something to somebody in your communication, and maybe you shock a few people. Maybe that's something that you've been holding back for a while and you just want to tell people how it is. I don't know. Maybe you let us know in the comments, Pisces Rising.
Yeah. Well, if you start a new workout, be mindful to start slowly, because that could be Mars retrograde in your fifth house. You try to move up in the weights too fast, and you kind of tweak something. So be mindful of that. But this could be a really lovely time for Pisces rising, with Venus in your first house and the Sun in your 11th house, spotlighting some
Absolutely.
nice things. Watch out, it's eating too much sugar.
That's it. Oh, that's a good point as well. Too many sweets. Absolutely wonderful. Well, let us
The
know,
holidays
Pisces.
are over, Pisces. Even though we know how much uh you love those simple pleasures.
Absolutely wonderful. Let us know in the comments. Fantastic. Well, Celeste, thank you so much for going through the astrological weather for the month of January for our new year and all of the rising signs. Let's speak about you. What's coming up for the new year for you? Any projects people should be looking out for? Any classes that you're teaching? What's going on for you right now?
Yeah, so I am going to be teaching transits. Well, it doesn't start till April, but I'll be teaching transits again for Kepler. Of course, you can listen to the Celestial Insights podcast to stay in the know. I'm actually using Mars retrograde to kind of take a step back and reevaluate all of my offerings. So there'll be some new things coming up, but you can always come for a reading or book a package of readings. For people who don't know, I have over 25 years of sales, marketing, and business development experience. So especially if you have some goals around your career or growth or need an accountability partner, I can help you using the lens of astrology in order to make 2025 your best year ever, because there's so much shifting energy and opportunities. It's going to be an incredible year.
It's really wonderful. And Celeste, you have such wonderful social media presence. I think you're on all the social medias now. If people find you, it's at Astrology by Celeste in most of the
Everywhere.
handles.
I'm at Astrology
Everywhere.
by Celeste. Everywhere. I'm on all the things. Instagram is my main platform, but I'm also on TikTok. We'll see how long that lasts. We didn't talk about that. That could be Pluto and Aquarius. News about TikTok. I'm also on YouTube, Blue Sky, and Threads. I do a lot of experimental stuff on Threads.
Absolutely. And your wonderful YouTube channel, I recommend everyone check that out. So for everybody watching, I'll leave all of Celeste's links below in the description box and the comment boxes. That will include Celeste's website, where you can go find out more, and all of the social media handles down in the bottom. And Celeste, you'll be back with us for, what will it be? January, February, March, April?
Aries,
Aries, there we
April.
go. Ingress, absolutely wonderful. Well, Celeste, it's always a wonderful pleasure to speak with you, and thank you so much. And we'll see you again in the next few months.
Sounds wonderful. Thanks so much, Cal.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for watching. See you next time. Bye bye.